Welcome everyone to Roguelikes You Should Know, or RYSK, as I suppose we're liking to call it. My name is Skip, and with me is Scott.
Howdy, howdy.
Are you ready to talk about something that's not Hades? I know last time all we could do was talk about Hades because it was on our minds. Are you ready to talk about something that may not be top of mind?
I'm ready. I'm ready, Skip. But here's the deal. It's Afterworld adjacent because I still get to be a skeleton.
That's true. That's true. So Skul the Hero Slayer, today's game. Hopping right into it, I suppose. Playing in a game where you are the anti-hero. Which is a fun video game mechanic, I should say.
The bad guy. You're the bad guy. Is that fair?
You're the bad guy. Yeah, you're definitely the bad guy.
Here's the deal. I love being the bad guy. It's fun. I love playing Grand Theft Auto. I love playing Monster Train.
Skul, even though it's Skul the Hero Slayer. Yes, you're the bad guy, but have you noticed, here's something about the game that I find really interesting with this game's mechanic, kind of out of the gate, is that it's as though you're playing the game as the bad guy, and someone, like, because you come across the heroes, you die to someone and it says they gained XP from killing
I know, that triggers me.
Oh, really?
I don't like the idea.
Oh.
I don't like the idea of a computer adapting like it should. Like when that first came up, when I died and it says, "Oh, that hero just gained experience for." I was offended. It was.
Oh.
I mean, I laughed, but it was just it tickled me, but it definitely made me like, if they're going to be getting harder because they beat me the way I get better and level up, it had me pause.
I don't think they are, though. I think
think they are.
That's just immersion.
It was a little flavor, yeah, a little flavor.
But honestly, I have to say I was a little bit worried about that as well when I first died. I went, "Oh, is this?"
Are they actually going to be faster next time? Yeah.
Yeah, or like what's that? Was the game? It was one of the Lord of the Rings adjacent games, like Shadows of Mordor or something like that, where when you would die to an enemy, I was going, are they trying to do that
better.
In a roguelike?
Right. Yes.
But I don't think so. I think this is just them kind of riffing a bit on you're the hero slayer.
This is a classic roguelike of how much exposure to how much risk. How much do I love my current build? Do I want to risk improving it or kind of reinvesting in what I've got?
You're referring to sort of the heads mechanic of the different combat systems, right?
That's really kind of the real thrust of the game is the heads, getting more heads or getting more gold or getting the paths you take. Those are the choices made. It's surviving the puzzles in battle and then which room you're going to take.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with the game yet or haven't seen it, if you're not watching the kind of gameplay play out here, if you're just listening to it, so it's a platformer action, real-time action roguelike. The main mechanic of the game is that you pick up these you can have two different skulls or heads, and each skull or head has a different combat mechanic, different way that you fight, different specials, different abilities that you can actively swap back and forth between them during the combat while you're clearing a room. You get to the end of the room, and there will be either gold, there will be an item that you can pick up that will boost your build in some way, or a different head. But you can only have two. So you always it's sort of a choice that you have to make as well. So that's kind of the basic mechanics of the game. You got your typical go through bosses, enemies get harder, and you die, and like any good roguelike, you start over again the next time.
You can only have two heads.
Only two.
I feel like a lot of the times you're doing a whole bunch of risk assessment in this game. Right now, I feel like this might be a combination or experiment with this ability that is working for me now, but I'm not exactly sure how much I should experiment with something I'm not familiar with, and if it is going to work with the next one. Because I think there's like 20 or 30 skulls. Like, there's a lot of different
There's a couple dozen. Yeah, I don't think there's as many as 30, but yeah, it's a decent number for sure for an early access game.
Yeah.
It's pretty well built out.
Like, I like games where it feels like it's more than one game you're getting. And I think the platformer of having the starter skull, the very straightforward, kind of does a little light stun. I don't think you do a double jump or anything, but it's very straightforward. You're not too fast. You're not too slow. You got okay range. And, you're not necessarily a glass cannon or anything. It's real standard. It's a real standard starter skull.
Very standard starter that once you get familiar with the game, you can actually get through the whole first area really without swapping off of that head.
It's a very good standard. I mean, I played platforms which are entirely based on a worse starting setup for just being able to navigate and get things done. So it's a fun platformer just with the meat and potatoes there, and then the idea that every single skull has its own strengths and weaknesses and kind of feels like its own game, the way all the different classes might in a RPG or something like that.
It definitely has, you can pick up a skull that will have a gun, like the mummy. It's kind of like shooting a gun from range.
Right. Very different experience than with a big axe.
And the different heads are even classed. Like some are power, like they hit heavier, but they're of course slower attacks with heavier hits. There's ones that are more based on speed. You have a few magic users that kind of focus on the ranged attacks.
I think I've seen like laying traps, kind of. There's just different ways of delivering the damage.
Exactly. So I think you were kind of getting at it before, so I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts specifically. I can direct you a little bit here with this one. Your thoughts specifically on, do you feel like you are wanting to experiment? Or is it where you get to sort of your favorite heads that you've gotten far with before, do you kind of want to stick to those? Does the game encourage you in any sense to sort of maybe check something else out or try a different build?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the struggle is I kind of want to have one skull that is utilitarian and then kind of an experimental skull. Like, so I can always be able to kill the mobs with my old reliable, something I know I'm good at.
Yep.
And then, because there are so many skulls and I do want to try the new thing, I want, and so much of the game is discovering the new skull. There's a lot of joy in seeing a new mechanic, the new interaction. That's new content.
But that can definitely come with the buyer's remorse, though. I've been there.
Absolutely. With this
you decide,
game.
hey, here's a new fun one I'm going to check out. You give up a combination of two heads. It's working great, and you swap to something which now you've lost a significant weapon in your arsenal. And if you're if you're beyond the first stage, especially, that can be just absolute death to your run.
Right. I have not gotten out of early intermediate quality gameplay, but I am interested in the combinations of switching in and out of different skull characters and that special move you get when you change skulls being very powerful and having a longer cooldown makes sense and is fun and works, especially with the art style and the pace and animation of this platformer. It definitely works. I just feel like the only max 2 heads as opposed to 3 feels like every big choice or any type of exploration has such a cost to it. I feel like this is a fine beginning for an early access game. There's some holes. There's some gaps, some fluidity, and the beauty of a lot of these new games that are coming out, where you start off with pretty much scratch. You start off every run with nothing. You might have some kind of inner run currency that gives you a little bit more health or a little bit more damage or something. And I think this one does have that. That does have the structure of the inner run currency and the intro run currency and
the currency that carries over after you die, whatever that.
I
forget
what
they're
micro
called,
and the macro, right? Yeah.
Right. I mean, the 2-head thing never really got to me, I think, as much as you. But there is another part of the game where I definitely feel like you're definitely punished for your choices, and that's because there is also the item system of things that you pick up during the game. 'Cause you pick up different heads, and I should say as well, like I'm with you. Like there's a specific build that I always go for. That's basically some type of big attack or explosion when you switch heads. It's just how I end up clearing rooms. But without that, I feel completely paralyzed. That's always sidebar. But the other mechanic is the sort of item mechanic, the relics or the artifacts and other games. They're all the interchangeable names, etc. But those that you pick up, and what they'll do is they'll say, okay, your character now has 20% additional move speed, or you've got more attack strength, or more magic strength, or your time to switch heads is reduced on these items. But you can only carry 9 of those. And so when you're just new to the game, you usually don't get up to 9. But once you get kind of mid-game, you reach a point where you can't pick up any new ones without leaving something behind. And so there is always that sense of, well, what's the right item combination to specifically take? Where I don't feel like the game has given enough item synergy to make one choice necessarily better than the other. Where I just feel like it'd be great to just be able to hold on to these, because it's not like I'm getting overpowered with all of them, but I have to give something up, so I'll give up magic power, and then I hope I never switch to a magic build. I feel like it's just further locking you into your early game choices, which isn't something you feel like you'd want to have in this game that's constantly giving you the ability to switch your heads out.
Right. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm now going to go down the path of exploring a new Skul, and the possibility could be an old favorite that I know is going to work really great with this powered up mob I'm seeing. It could be the crappy Skul that I'm going to be miserable if I get, or it could be something brand new and exciting. This huge high risk, high reward shot, roll the dice.
So would you say, though, these things are things that they could be fixing in early access?
Oh, absolutely. You know what?
Is it sort of like it's already way too far down the road of forcing you down a single path?
I do not feel like my opinion is locked in by any means. Okay. In fact, I would say the way Hades was too hard and the boons didn't work very well together. There wasn't as much intelligence to guide me through what works in a Hades run. Skul feels all over the place in the same way on their runs in early access. I could draw a definite connection between those experiences. So I'm very excited to see if they do balance and guidance and better, tighter algorithms for what shows up when you're doing well with what. It is very promising. But it is an early access, and I can totally understand someone wanting it to get fully baked before they drop the $17.99 or whatever.
For sure. I feel the same way about it. I mean, it's definitely there's still some balancing that needs to be done. I guess the piece about the interchanging heads, I'm not sure that's something that, with only being 2, etc., I'm not sure that's something they're going to necessarily change out. Because they've done a lot of balancing throughout early access already with that. One piece that's relatively new, though, that I'm not at all a huge fan of, that I'm really hoping that they rethink before they go to their first version, is this inscription system that they actually have on the items. I don't know, did you see those when you were playing through, or did you not notice those?
I'm not sure I noticed those. Tell me more.
And that's probably part of the problem, is that I only know about it. I only knew what it was because I read the release notes at one point and went, oh, I didn't even realize that was on there. So that every item that you pick up, not the heads, but one of the 9 items that you can pick up, the relics, so to speak, they've got an inscription on it for, like, I don't even know the examples of it, but they're different build types. And there's like 8 or 9 different build types. The idea is that if you pick up items that have got the same inscription on them, and every item has 2 inscriptions on it, so if any of the inscriptions match up, they give you sort of bonus stats. If you have 1 inscription, you get 5% magic increase. If you have 2 of the same, it gives you a bonus 10%, etc.
I see.
And so the idea is that you should be trying to go for all of level. The same stackable inscriptions. The problem is that because they're random on the items, they don't really pertain. It's not like they stack on a specific item type. So like you could have something that boosts your attack power with something that boosts your defense. Like they're not related at all. And
Right.
and so if you're going for something that's, let's say I'm going just a pure physical attack, I could have inscriptions on those items that completely don't resonate with the
Right.
build I'm going for. Whereas I could have something that all of a sudden be like, hey, boost your magic attack with the inscription that gives me the physical attack thing that I'm going for. And so in a run, you never really get to the point where you feel like your items and the inscriptions are working together to give you that OP build that you would be kind of wanting in the game.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And even then, the inscriptions are very, I'd say they're very video game build vanilla. Attack power increase, defense increase, speed increase.
They don't capture the imagination.
They don't. It's not like your second attack is going to inflict poison on enemies next to this guy.
Yeah, I even like just things that just offer more control, change the way I'm playing, so that I'm like emitting poison cloud underneath my jumps. That's then stackable, or just there's nothing that is really making me question how I would be playing differently with this skull. Nothing is coming in and actually affecting my choices.
Well, think of the things that you'd look for when playing Slay the Spire, for example. Yeah. You find early on, you start to find certain cards. If you mention poison, let's say you're playing with a silence, you start to find those poison cards, and you start to think, oh, maybe I could look for relics and other cards to really enhance this poison build to try and stack lots of poison and have fun that way. Versus, with the same character, maybe you found a Shiv build where you're getting quick attacks and stuff like that. There's really never a sense of, I'm starting to do build X in Skul, which I feel like is really missing. Something very, very, very fixable. This is something that can be very, very fixed, because all it is doing is just changing how this inscription system works and maybe starting to do some outside of the box thinking on status effects and how these builds happen.
Right.
But it's just not there today, unfortunately.
I do think that you have fun, you're effective, but in a boring way.
I should mention something else that I feel like maybe we're overlooking about what this game is accomplishing, but it opens it up another question. All the different ways that you can attack, with maybe the exception of the mummy that feels a little bit out of place. There's really not a head that I picked up where I've gone, well, that attack feels really out of place, or that attack style is weird. But every head you pick up, not every head, but most heads you pick up, all attack in a little bit different way. It's different. It's like picking up completely different weapons in a game like Dead Cells, and they all actually perform pretty well. I have to say it's actually rather surprising that it's got so many different attack mechanics that feel on their own relatively built out.
I mean, a lot of it that I've failed with is just because I haven't had the patience to either learn the mob patterns or the patterns of the weapon to get effective, because all of a sudden I'm getting something that feels like this big, heavy hammer that's super slow, super, super high damage, right? But it's so slow, and I don't quite know the combo pacing, and I don't quite...
It does suffer from that. You're going to kill yourself from mashing.
You're going to kill yourself from learning.
Yeah.
You're going to kill yourself just from trying to figure out
that too.
How to survive this one room whenever every room gets harder. And then I don't know the next time I'm going to see that thing that I'm in the middle of learning.
That's very true. You often, especially with the rarer heads, you'll pick them up sometimes late run. You get to go to one or two rooms with it, and you're like, well, I didn't figure that one out yet. And,
right.
I'm not comfortable with it yet. So it's,
and then it'd be nice if I was at least curious, maybe for the next run I could keep it, so I could at least try that out on the next single run's level 0 bad guys, or good guys in this case. Level 0 guys. Because if I discover something that's awesome in a game, if I die with this awesome, cool ability, power, item, boon, whatever...
I definitely think that's something that as you would put more hours and more runs in would become less of an issue. But that definitely from a beginner friendly perspective, from someone who's just checking out the game, I mean, I think I've got probably, let's actually see. I can actually check how many hours I have in this game if I can figure out where my mouse is on the screen here. Let's take a look. Skul the Hero Slayer. I'm at 10 hours. So not a ton of time into it. But, 10 hours is the point where I feel like I should know most of the mechanics of the game, but I don't, because there actually are still heads that I have not picked up yet because they haven't shown up, or when they have, I've taken a pass on them.
So I played it, and I definitely made note of the 2-hour mark to see whether or not I was going to return it on Steam with the refund policy, and I decided to keep it. I played another hour and a half or so, but then I kind of said to myself, all right, I get the structure of the system, and I'm excited to see it fully released. Yeah. So I don't want to sing its praises yet, but I'm still very optimistic. It being
I'm in the same camp.
Early Mostic, it being early access.
I'm in the same camp as well. I'm this way with a lot of early access games at this point, where I'm going, I've played enough of it to go, it's worth watching. It's worth watching what the developers do. I'm the type of person that I kind of keep an eye on when they have new release notes, when they're saying what they're figuring out, and new systems, which is how I knew about the inscriptions, because I'd been watching the patch notes. But not one that until full release I'm going to dump a lot of time into, just because I feel like there's still those kind of balancing issues that we'd mentioned, and things that, I haven't put a lot of time into it, because if they do make a lot of the changes I'm hoping they will, the game will have changed significantly by the time I come back to it anyways, and it'll be learning a whole new game.
Right. I definitely got that vibe. Mm-hmm.
And once games come out of early access, I like to start a new file anyways, so it's...
Right.
I don't want to feel like I've wasted my time, so to speak. So to bring us all the way back, what I was kind of mentioning before, where I think this ties in, is what about the meta progression in Skul? Because there is an upgrade system where you spend whatever currency you collect throughout the game between runs to give you a little bit more health, a little bit more attack power. Does that add to the game? Does it take away from the game? Is it sort of meh to the game? What are your thoughts on that?
I thought currently with what's right now before first release, very meh. I wasn't thinking about it. It wasn't directing my choices on what to spend really well, I didn't think. And like we said, there wasn't a lot of creativity on what we were adding to or leveling up in any way. It was all
it's vanilla,
predictable, and vanilla.
It was just because, I think if I remember correctly, the first 3 are just health, attack power, and then I think it's a cooldown on your head swap speed, like a reduction of the cooldown time.
Yeah, that's cool, I guess. That's
that's
a thing. That's something that's not in every game. Because
but
the head
there's
swap
no
mechanic is feature that does feature the idea of you could get peanut butter and jelly and actually find a great combination between them. Yeah.
But it honestly was nothing that the mechanic of the unlocks just felt like, oh, there's unlocks between the runs. And I guess my first impression of it, especially whenever I see one that's not implemented well, when it's just sort of, here you go, unlock stuff, I feel like I instantly ask this question, I go, oh, so did I fail because the game is balanced for someone who has this tree fully unlocked?
Right.
And that's where I go, oh, I hope not, because then I'm going to have to grind. And I don't play roguelike games to grind. That's what when I played Final Fantasy, everyone knew you had to grind in order to stand in lines and slap each other. But, that's not why I play roguelikes. I play roguelikes because I want a new experience every time. But if my new experience is going to be hampered because I haven't gotten my skill tree unlocked...
It is a compromise, absolutely, I think, because the sweet spot for me is the temporary unlocks. Kind of like what I was saying is like, okay, you're going to get this cool thing the next run, right? The idea that it's not every turn that you're going to get double damage. It's the next set of rooms or the next level or the next run only.
Very almost I would say, Neon Abyss-like. The permanent upgrades in that game are basically item unlocks.
Right.
And character unlocks, too. And so playing as different starting characters, you're unlocking. So you're just unlocking different ways of having the game go, not your main character now hits harder every single game. If they just broke out of sort of the mold of just the vanilla upgrades.
Well, the only thing better than dozens of skulls is the ability for me to fully customize my skulls 4 ways and 4 different subways under that. So then I really have.
So you mean like the
16
special,
skulls within one?
So you mean like the special attacks that you have on there, that you could take like a special attack for one skull and add it to another one, or the entry attack would be swappable, that type of thing?
If I kill enough baddies with a certain skull, let me take something from it that I let me adopt some kind of trait from my hero killing. Make that be a permanent part of my run. Make that be some kind of reward for the next run. But the art's fun. You know, it's definitely got a color scheme that is unlike most games. And
I was about to ask about the
attractive.
art. Kind of your thoughts on that. I mean,
I think it works, and I really like it. Yeah. I like playing games with my 6-year-old being able to watch. I know he recognizes it as good looking and that it has a great palette to it.
That's the thing, is that it's interesting because it's like Skul the Hero Slayer. You'd think, it's going to be all dark, but it's actually of the brighter and more
whimsical art.
Whimsical is a good way of putting it, and where it's definitely, I could see young kids enjoying watching or even heck playing this game, because it's not like it's gory. It's not what you would expect when you see the Hero Slayer. When I first saw the title, when someone had suggested it to me to check it out, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a dark game, but it's actually not that. And I really appreciate that it took this concept of you're playing as the bad guy, but put the bad guy into the hero light and the aesthetic that you normally would see. I really like that, actually.
I love the idea that our traditional understanding of the adventurer coming into a dungeon and cleaning it out, it might be kind of like a Columbus Day, where we don't quite understand that there is a city-state asleep for hibernation that has a secret history and traditions and is a people.
You're just walking through there killing stuff. We were just hanging
Tearing
out
through
in our own swamp.
Yeah.
And you come in here, you get poisoned by stepping in our swamp. You clearly shouldn't be here. What are you doing in our swamp?
He steals the gold that generations of our people have gathered through the years.
We've been storing that in our community chests because Gary needed surgery.
And Gary makes the traps, which we've got to reset now. You know, so there's plenty of ripe turn the narrative around on the quote-unquote good guy being a weapon of mass destruction. But what if they just took it the next step, just one step further, which is instead of the hero who dies and his flesh is gone and then he comes back as a skeleton, what when the skeleton dies, comes back as a hero?
Oh, so constantly flipping?
You die that way, you come back as a skeleton.
Huh.
There's pieces there where if they went that one extra mile of additional flipping it, making it be a day and a night, I feel like it's just really close to doing something different. But it's like instead they'll probably add crafting or fishing. You know, instead.
They'll add fishing. They'll add a dog that you can pet.
They'll add a dog. They'll let you know have a relationship and get married. That's
coming. You'll be able to have a farm that you can tend. And
right.
Grow
I just have
crops.
I'm leery. I'm optimistic, but I don't want to get my heart broken.
Yeah.
So.
I'm 100% the same way. The last topic, I'd say, I have to ask, especially coming out of Hades, which forever will be my benchmark from now on.
Coming out of Hades. Well, we're trying,
the music,
aren't we?
The music. What are your thoughts on the music?
Oh, non-memorable.
Yeah, I could say that. It's better than some games.
Better than some games. I mean, how big is this developer publisher? They're pretty small, right? I should probably cut them a break.
They're small, yeah, and so they're not a major studio. And I actually found the soundtrack to be enjoyable because for me, I try to think of it wasn't one where I went, oh, well, this I want to put on my own music because I've certainly had games that do that.
That's true. That's true.
I felt like it captured the mood, and specifically what it captured the mood is that it's fairly almost whimsical music.
Right.
But it fits. And so it's you're that anti-hero in a nice aesthetic, in a beautiful aesthetic that's a kid-friendly aesthetic with that same style that almost makes you think, wait, why are these heroes attacking me? It does kind of, even the music I feel like plays into that. So I think the music, it does its job, even though it's not going to be a Supergiant Games Darren Core, thing. It's not going to be Danny B on Necrodancer. It's not going to be those types of games.
Sure.
But I actually respected what I think the studio did with the music, at least so far. And it's not going to get stuck in your head, though. It's not going to be a soundtrack you're probably going to download.
I think a lot of people, like, for me, I don't seek out soundtracks. I've never bought a game's original soundtrack separately, even ones that I absolutely adore. Like I kind of put those in the same category as story in some ways, where the really great or really experimental stuff that works should be noted and appreciated, but it's really bad if a flaw in it gets in the way and ruins an experience. Mm-hmm. So if it kind of just adds subtly and I'm not picking up a lot of its thumbprints and it's just being a good support background part of the experience, that's really the standard. Like, just don't distract too much, don't be obnoxious, and I'm not gonna go out of my way.
It needs to fit the aesthetic of the game effectively to do its job, which honestly should be the goal of any good video game soundtrack creators, that first and foremost it needs to support the game that you're playing, because
it doesn't need to. I would disagree.
You disagree?
You could. I take away the music on my games all the time. I do. I put my own music on.
Well, I do that when I feel like the music doesn't do the supporting of the game. Right.
So the option is you don't need to. It just means I've got to go into settings and fix it.
I feel like it's a missed opportunity, though.
It is.
Another example of that
it's
for me would be going
back to, but it's not
necessary. Would be going back to Neon Abyss. I think is a prime example of this. Neon Abyss, like, it plays itself into this 80s vibe, nightclub.
Yep.
And it has like 2 songs, maybe 3 in the entire game.
They're good songs.
They're good,
but they do get repetitive. It does repetitive, as does the game layout. It matches a little too well both the strengths and the flaws of the game. That's for sure.
And that's where I go. I want a soundtrack. Personally, for me, I'd love a soundtrack to reinforce what's happening, and that's what's going to push a game from good to great.
Well, I mean, I would like a story to also reinforce what's happening.
That's true.
But I don't. I will give. I view it a little bit like extra credit. I just don't feel like it's an issue that you're gonna sway voters on. So I feel like it's kind of like a. If it's a good thing, it should be called out and celebrated, and whenever it's experimental or whenever it's doing a risk and it pays off, good. But I'm not really going to throw it, like, I'm not going to give points off.
I hear you there. I will give it points off if it is distracting, but I won't give it points off if it's not there yet in early access. I'm with you on that one.
If it's a don't play with the music on, then yeah, I mean, that's a crappy thing to have to
That's
throw
unfortunate.
in there.
Yeah.
That's an unfortunate.
So speaking of the overall, all right, we come to that part of the episode. Where what I need from you is, in your words, in your rating system.
Yeah.
How are you going to rate Skul? Knowing it's an early access, of course, the caveats that things could change. But if the game was released, I'd say not as though the game were released well, you kind of have to go if the game were released in version 1 today, where would it stand? But you can throw a caveat. You can throw a caveat in there in your review words.
Yeah.
But if it were to release today as a version 1, in your words, what would you say as for this game, including any caveats that you have?
Yeah. I would say, Skip, that you need to wait. This is obviously should only be considered for somewhat hardcore fans of the genre, for even a consideration. Where you've played a lot of roguelikes, you love roguelikes and or roguelites, and action platformer roguelites are your thing, and you want to try a bunch of different ones and different takes on them. That is it. That is the only potential market right now for this game. If you check all of those boxes, watch some streams or watch some videos of it, and they'll know that those are going to be the best parts of the experience, and then maybe take a step down that path if you're open to doing a lot of RNG for the overall gameplay experience. You're going to have to just kind of suffer through it, the learning grind of what the things do, what the patterns of because it's all patterns of the mobs, and the pattern of your weapons being able to work with the mobs based on what you can do in your tactics within the situation. So you got to go through the pain of learning all of that, and whether or not you're able to, because you like the aesthetic and you like the horizon of choice and the perceived choice or illusion of choice.
So wait is yours.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
wait.
I say wait. I say wait because it isn't balanced right now. But it could be. So let us tell you once it's released, if it has gotten better. So tune back in when we'll do a we'll
have to have a segment. We talked about this game, and now it's coming out.
Right.
How is it now? How is it now? Or some we'll name it something as podcasts do.
But I would say wait. What do you say, Skip?
Very similar advice. I'd say if you can pick it up in an upcoming Steam sale, why not? Would be my advice. For full price right now, I feel like it's too much of a risk if you're only going to be picking up a couple games. If you're the person like me that you literally buy 5 to 6 roguelikes and roguelites a month, then this one will probably be on your list of ones to check out. Just because it has a lot of potential. I enjoyed my time playing it. The 10 hours I put into it were enjoyable. So if you're able to pick it up for $5 and you get just 10 hours of enjoyable time out of it, that's actually a pretty good deal. I do hope and think the game will get better. But again, I'd say if you're unsure and you don't want to spend the money on it, wait and see. It's definitely not one to ignore. Maybe put it on your wish list and just kind of see what happens with it. And it has the potential, and it's an enjoyable game that just needs the finishing touches and some balancing adjustments to how the game build mechanic works to be a full-fledged recommend for me.
The nice thing about the roguelikes is that's enough to have us be hopeful.
There's a lot at the core of this game that's enjoyable, that's fun, that does stuff a little bit differently. That it could be great. So next episode. Speaking of new games that kind of take a risk, this one definitely does. Next episode, we are going to be talking about Ratropolis. New episodes are going to be dropping every 2 weeks, so make sure you're either subscribed on our YouTube channel to see the video podcast, or you've got subscriptions to it on wherever you get your podcasts from. We're going to be talking about Ratropolis. Well, talking about specifically in that episode, we're finally going to deal with the elephant in the room. How do you define a roguelike and a roguelite?
Oh, wow.
We're gonna get into. We're gonna get into it. Are you ready?
Oh my gosh, I teased it a little bit today. I teased it. We're gonna get into it. So all right.
But thanks everyone for being here. Scott, I appreciate chatting with you. I could do it forever, but we gotta call it quits sometime for the sake of everyone else listening. But thanks so much.
Skipper, thank you.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.